Hello, John from Lords of Time here, and today I'm going to present my theory on the number of incarnations/body the Master has had and who they are. The first Master was the child shown in The Sound of Drums. Then we have the new Big Finish Master played by James Dreyfus. He is said to be the first known incarnation of the Master, which suggests he's the first incarnation as we saw him as a child. But if all my theory is wrong, it could be anywhere between the first incarnation and either the 11th or 12th Master. However, if all my theory is correct, which I strongly doubt it is, he could be anywhere between the 1st and 8th or 9th. We don't know about most of the others in his first regeneration cycle. However, I think that the meddling monk could be a previous incarnation of the Master. There's little or no evidence to support this, other than the fact he is the first Time Lord villain. The monk just wanted to change history to a version he thought was better, so I think that maybe the Doctor and other Time Lords told him what he was doing was wrong. He didn't like being told this, so changed to an even worse version, where he tries to destroy planets and races and conquer the universe, like the Master we all know. The next possible incarnation is the villain from The Mind Robber, who is called the Master of the Land of Fiction, the Master of the Land, or even just the Master for short. However, there is nothing to suggest that he is the Master or even a Time Lord other than his name. The third possible pre-Delgado incarnation is the War Chief from the War Games. This is the most likely of the three, as, at the time, the writers were thinking of a Time Lord villain, and the War Chief was an experiment, and the creators of him now think of him as the Master. That brings us to the Roger Delgado Master, which is widely accepted to be the 13th and final of his first regeneration cycle. I believe this. However, he could be the 12th Master, as I will address in a moment. We then come to the Cade Master in The Deadly Assassin, portrayed by Peter Pratt, and later Geoffrey Beevers in The Keeper of Traken. Now, I have 4 possible reasons to how he became this way. The first was on an article I read, but I can't remember where. For this, you need to know that the first Doctor story, Dalek Invasion of Earth, took place in 2150, and at the end of the story, the Doctor leaves Susan so she can marry David, so that she didn't have to choose between the two. The article said that the Master went to Earth in 2150, killed David and kidnapped Susan, not realising she had Gallifreyan heritage. She then used his tissue compressor eliminator and escaped, leaving the Master in his decayed state. The second theory starts with a book/comic, The Doorway to Hell, where the 12th Doctor meets the Roger Delgado Master, and at the end of the book/comic, the Master regenerates. The theory then goes on to say that his next incarnation is normal to start off with, but then decays into the form we see in The Deadly Assassin. This theory revolves around the fact that the Roger Delgado Master is the 12th incarnation and not the 13th, which I find very hard to believe. So, I'll come back to it later, but for now, I'll consider it non-canon. The third theory is what is said in The Deadly Assassin, which I haven't seen for ages, so please correct me if I get this wrong. States that he has decayed due to severe dehydration, and his body has died, but his hatred for the Doctor and his thirst for revenge is keeping him alive. So, out of these 3, I'm disregarding the Susan theory, as I feel it is the least likely, and are putting together the latter 2 to form the only one of these 4 that I came up with, and my favourite. This time, it has the Doorway to Hell being canon, but Delgado is the 13th incarnation. I haven't actually read Doorway to Hell, but assuming we don't see who he regenerated into, he should have died there, but his hatred for the Doctor managed to summon up a bit of regeneration energy, enough to save him from dying then, but not enough to give him a proper new body, so he regenerates into the decayed form. Whilst this is my favourite of the four theories, I often work with which is the most likely, and I feel that the explanation given in The Deadly Assassin is the most likely. Then comes Jeffrey Beavers in The Keeper of Traken, which is the same body as Peter Pratt. At the end of the story, he enters Tremas's body. For those who are not aware, the writers called him Tremas as it was an anagram of Master. This is his 14th body, but still his 13th incarnation. So, whenever you see the Ainley Master, it is really the Beavers Master in Tremas's body. Ainley lasted until the end of Classic Who. Beavers appeared in a number of Big Finish audio stories, where it is revealed that he keeps hopping from body to body when the body he is using dies. He uses at least 3 more bodies, then uses the Sun body in comics. Then we come to the brief Gordon Tipple encounter at the start of the TV movie. Some fans think he's the same body as Ainley. However, Ainley shot scenes for the new video game, The Destiny of the Doctors, a year later, so I don't think that this is the case, as he was still prepared to play the Master. Also, at a behind-the-scenes photo of him dressed as the Master, he doesn't look much like Ainley. Then he gets executed by the Daleks, and his remains are taken over. His remains take over the body of Bruce, the paramedic. Bruce then gets sucked into the Eye of Harmony, somehow escapes, and takes the form of Alex McQueen in Dark Eyes 1, 2, and 3. He says he is working for the Time Lords, and that they cured his condition. They cured his little predicament, which is suggested to mean having to hop from body to body. So that also suggests that he has been granted a new regeneration cycle, and he is the first of that cycle. The end of the first regeneration cycle ends at 13 incarnations, 20 bodies, and 8 or possibly 9, 10 or 11 actors. We then have the War Master, and no, I'm not talking about Derek Jacobi yet. I'm talking about the one before him, seen alongside the War Doctor in comics. Whilst he could be the Master after Alex McQueen, John Sims' Master says that he was resurrected because the Time Lords thought he'd make a perfect warrior, and, as far as I am aware, there is no mention of this in Dark Eyes 1, 2 or 3. I therefore believe that he lived out his remaining 12 incarnations and died. The Time Lords then resurrected him and gave him a new cycle. This leads to the first War Master, who then regenerates into Derek Jacobi, who disguises himself as a human, appears in The Christmas Carol Goes Wrong, and flees to the end of the universe. Then, in the event of Utopia, becomes a Time Lord again and regenerates into John Sim. Sim then acts as a villain in the worst story in Doctor Who history, The Sound of Drums and the Last of the Time Lords, and then dies. He is resurrected in the end of time, and is then plummeted back into the Time War. They then cured his little condition and kicked him out. Missy then kills him. He presumably regenerates into Missy. She has a series when she's bad, a series when she doesn't appear, a series when she's good, and then gets killed by the Sim Master. And now comes the most ridiculous part of my theory, that the Rani is an incarnation of the Master. This theory is so ridiculous that even I don't believe it. But, if this were to be the case, there are 3 possible places. One is that it is in the cycle which is started off by Alex McQueen, which I feel is unlikely, as either Sim or Gomez would probably have referenced them being a woman before. Another is that, since we don't actually see Sim regenerate into Gomez, she could be in that gap. The third is that the explosion the Doctor causes in the Doctor Falls triggered Missy's regeneration before she died, and the Rani comes sometime after that. For all those asking why she couldn't come in the first cycle, is because our only encounter with the Doctor prior to the time and the Rani was the Mark of the Rani, when she appeared alongside Ainley's master, so it would be Ainley's master who remembers these events, not the Rani, as she clearly does in the time in the Rani. Okay, so, adding them all together, the meddling monk I don't consider as an incarnation, but I would willingly accept it if it was ever said he was. The master from the mines robber I definitely don't count. I do count the war chief, and as far for how Delgado turned into Pratt, I'm accepting the explanation in The Deadly Assassin, and I'm not counting the Rani. So, I think that James Dreyfus is most likely to be the first master, along with William Hughes as the child, but I like to think of him as the second, so you still have an option to introduce an earlier incarnation. Incarnations 2 or 3 to 10 are unknown. 11 might be the monk, but is probably unknown. 12 is the war chief. 13 is Delgado, who decays into Pratt and Beavers, steals Trimus's body, then 3 more, then Sons, then Tipples, and then Bruce's. Then we get Alex McQueen and 12 more unknown ones. We then have the first War Master, followed by Derek Jacobi, followed by John Sim, followed by Michelle Gomez. Whilst the Master and Missy is now dead, I have no doubts that they will come back in the future. I just don't know how. So, we have 29 incarnations, possibly 20, possibly 21, but probably 22 are unknown. 36 bodies, and probably 13, but possibly 12 or 14 actors. Phew, I'm glad that is finally done. What do you guys think?